Greetings, everybody. I want to introduce you to a podcast series. It's not on the YouTube channel. It's over on the podcast, Into the Pray. Running up to Christmas, throughout this Advent, I'm reading this classic by A.W. Tozer, The Knowledge of the Holy. The attributes of God, their meaning in the Christian life, the attributes of God. And I want to just quickly take a minute or two, very quickly, to let you know why I'm doing this book. And part of the reason, of course, is that the run-of-the-mill content that we see around Advent is often not very helpful, in my opinion. We don't see devotional series that helps us to focus on God with the kind of granular nuance and detail and biblical examine that we need in order to know him better, Ephesians 1:17. And so this book, classic as it is, you may have never heard of it, but it's a classic. This is an old version, but you can get the book very easily and very cheaply from Amazon. In fact, you might even be able to get it for free online, a PDF, that kind of thing. I first heard about this book maybe about between 12 and 15 years ago, and I ended up doing a music project, which I'll link into this video. It's old, so you'll get to see me without any facial hair. But it was a kind of pivotal moment in my life when I first heard a quote from this book that I'm going to just read to you. It's the very first line of the first chapter. And Tozer just says, and he starts every chapter with a prayer, "What comes into our minds when we think about God is the most important thing about us." What comes into our mind when we first think about God is the most important thing about us. It was the late Gerald Coates. Some of you will know Gerald. He died recently, and I remember him preaching. He did a message called The Dancing Father, and it was a message about the prodigal son who'd, as you'll know, left his family home in disgrace, squandered his inheritance, and ended up in the insanity of a pigsty eating with the pigs. He came to his senses. What a grace and what a mercy that was. And then eventually came back home, and it was the father, the dancing father, as Gerald Coates called him, who had picked up the robes, his robe, and his breaking all the cultural norms. What a faux pas! Runs towards the prodigal son, despite the prodigal son's fear that he would be rejected and that his sin would not be covered, that he would be too far gone. And yet the father ran to the prodigal, who was still far off. He ran to him and then slaughtered the fattened calf and threw the biggest party imaginable despite the protests of the other son. The dancing father was how Gerald Coates first thought of God, and how he was trying to encourage other young men and other young women to also think about God. The first thing, what comes into our minds when we think about God, is the most important thing about us. And this Christmas is Advent, running up to Christmas on Sunday. I'd encourage you to listen to these 11 podcasts. I take 2 of these short chapters a day. It's about 25-30 minutes a day reading 2 of these chapters that focus each on an attribute of our Heavenly Father, the dancing Father, the one who picks up his robe and runs to us when we're still yet far off. I hope it's a real blessing to you this Christmas.